up, Dragon Brood? This is the last of our deck reveal series for Core Set 2021 as we lead up to the early access event. And this one actually comes sort of by way of the comment section here on YouTube. Had somebody ask, why don't we make one that's just a life gain theme? And it was interesting because I just did a life gain theme deck for Standard, I guess about 2 weeks ago, and decided, okay, cool, let's see what we get from Core Set 2021. Interestingly, we get to add black cards to the list to make it work, at least to try this version anyway. But before we get into the deck, remember to like this channel, subscribe, or actually like this video, subscribe to the channel. I guess you could like this channel. I'd like to think you do if you subscribe, obviously. And remember to hit the notification bell so that you get notified anytime I have new decks or other videos up. But for now, let's take a look at this life gain list. Alright, this is going to be a fun one, honestly. I enjoyed this list when we played it just in Standard recently, so I expect these changes will make the deck even more explosive, really, when you see what we're doing with it. So we're still starting out with just 3 Alseed of Life's Bounty. We had 4, I've now moved to 3, just because I wasn't really sure where we needed to shave points from, and this is a less powerful card to draw late in the game, so I figured something had to go, might as well be that. Playing 3 Fight as 1, just as a way to kind of offset some of the removal, maybe stop some of the sweepers, just whatever it is to allow your deck to keep pushing forward. Now, could this be removed in the future? Maybe, because in most cases you're only going to get to use one side of it. You're rarely going to get to stop 2 things, except for in the cases where maybe you have a Linden out and some other creature, then you can actually get double uses out of it. Otherwise, you're just going to be 1 for 1 trying to prevent a removal of some sort. We're still playing 4 Healer's Hawk because it's the best 1-drop for this deck. It flies, it has lifelink, it's a 1/1, pretty much everything you want out of a 1-drop. We're playing 1 little sneaky Speaker of the Heavens. I don't know if this card's any good, but it is Vigilance, it is lifelink, and if you happen to get to 27 life, you can tap it and start making angels. So in the weird way, if you're playing against, say, slower control type decks, it's very possible that you can get to 27, 30 plus life. I mean, we've had that happen multiple times. And then if you draw this, it's like, okay, maybe you don't have to do anything else, just keep making angels. And that's fine, so you don't have to overcommit. So that's something to think about. Playing 4 Ajani's Pridemate, for obvious reasons, with everything in this deck gaining life in some way, shape, or form, Pridemates definitely are going to get quite large. We're only playing Blessed by the Sun. And this is something I debated on, but really when I started thinking about it, of all the cards in the decks, Daxos actually wasn't all that important anymore. Mostly because it's only a 2 power, it can be blocked by everything on the ground, doesn't have lifelink. It does let us gain some extra life, which is nice, but in 1-point chunks, it's not that big of a deal. And it is legendary, which limits us from having more than 1 in play, so decided to just go with 2 for now. Still playing 2 Banishing Lights, mostly as a catch-all removal card, so we can just deal with things that are difficult. I didn't want to leave the deck just completely stranded, even though it is possible we are playing an aggro deck, we may be able to attack fast enough to where that ends up not mattering, but you at least want to give yourself an out. We're playing 2 Gideon Blackblade. This card is actually still proving its weight in this type of list. I mean, you can give something else lifelink, which helps the, I guess, synergy with the other cards, if you want to call it that. It also itself is a big 4/4 attacker, and it doesn't necessarily die to the sweepers that your other creatures are going to die to. So all of those are very important. Playing 3 Heliod actually, the Sun Crowned, and this is good because it's very possible Heliod becomes active. There's many times you're attacking with a 5/5 Heliod. It does give something else lifelink. It does get your creatures larger whenever you gain life. So this does a lot. I mean, if you draw this on turn 3 or 4 after you've dropped something each of the previous turns, you could end up doing a whole lot of damage really quickly. Another one of the new cards we're looking at here. Let me scroll that up so you can see it better. The Indulging Patrician. So for those of you who don't know, it's a colorless, a white, a black. It is 1/4, flying, lifelink. At the beginning of your end step, if you gained 3 or more life, each opponent loses 3 life. So this is a pretty sweet card. One, it flies, which is nice. It has lifelink, which is nice. It's a 1/4, so it blocks a lot of things. And on top of all that, if you gain 3 on a turn, your opponent loses 3. So this is pretty big considering how many creatures you have that have lifelink. I mean, if you attack with 3 or more power of lifelink things, your opponent takes an additional 3 that turn. So that's pretty significant, especially when you talk about putting it with something like Linden, right? You can attack, all those triggers happen. Then at the end of the turn, no matter what happens during the combat step, your opponent's still going to take 3 damage or lose 3 life. So that's really, really big. When you're talking about your cards working together and really trying to bring the game to a close, this is pretty big. And consider that if you have multiples, that could be 6 life your opponent's losing. So I'll be interested to see how this card plays out. Then another new card we're looking at is Vito, Thorn of the Dust Grows. Well, by the way, if y'all didn't notice, we're playing 3 Lindens there while I was talking about the card. But Vito's pretty cool too, that whenever you gain life, your opponent loses that much life. And then you can pay 5 and creatures you control gain lifelink until end of turn. So we're playing Vito mostly for his static ability, right? Second ability is rarely going to come into play because, I mean, except for maybe like Heliod or Gideon, almost everything has lifelink on some level anyway. No, that's not true. I guess we could pump up a Johnny's Pridemate, and that would be cool. But it's not something we need to be doing, and it is a pretty pricey ability. But in the event that you do need it, it can bring the game to a close, right? Like if you're attacking with 2 or 3 things, or maybe your opponent's in a situation where they're having to chump block one big Johnny's Pridemate, activating Vito could end the game. You know, each time you gain life, your opponent loses that much. So there are many times, I'm sure y'all have seen it, where you see in a Johnny's Pridemate at an 8, 9, 10 power. I mean, no matter how your opponent blocks, you're going to gain that 10 if you have it lifelink in some way. Playing 2 Ajani Strength of the Pride. This is still really all around probably the best Planeswalker for this deck, being on theme. It can gain you life. It can just make another Pridemate, you know, which is always good. And I have actually used the ultimate once, where you just end up wiping all your opponent's stuff out. So all around pretty good, and it does fill a quality slot in the 4 mana space that we don't have a lot of in this deck. And then a throwback that got reprinted that we're going to be playing with are 2 Baneslayer Angels. This is pretty cool because 1, it flies, 2, it's first strike, 3, it's lifelink, and then randomly it has protection from demons and dragons. Now, that being said, the only demons and dragons really that matter right now are probably going to be the newer dragons, but you can block them and not care. But the other thing is, with it being a 5/5, this card is strong, and with it first striking and lifelinking, it can save you in so many situations against other aggro decks. It's possible we may want to go to more mana and eventually just play 3 or 4 of these, but for now, 2 is probably plenty with it being a 5 mana creature. So just something to think about there as well. Land, we're going with 4 Godless Shrines, 4 Temple of Silence, the rest a bunch of plains, and there should be 1 Castle Ardenvale. There it is, hiding out in there. So we only have 8 black sources for 6 black cards, but we only need to get 1 of them, and neither of them are critical to us winning the game. They're just very, very useful. So it's possible, if it ends up being a sticking point, we could change this list to include maybe like 2 Fabled Passage and 1 Swamp, just to give us more opportunity to get there. The problem is we don't want to set up our turns to where we get too many tap lands or non-useful lands on turns 1 or 2 when we're trying to set up our board. So that's just something else to think about there. Now, it's very possible that this deck list wants to go back to being heavy on Daxos, play extra Castle Ardenvales. Maybe it doesn't even want the black mana at all, and the new cards were wasted, and we just go heavy on Baneslayer Angel, right? I can totally see all that. There are multiple ways this can go. I'm just going this way because I believe these changes can allow you to kind of shut the door a bit easier against the opponent, especially after they've swept the board or whatnot. Being able to get 1 or 2 big things can just end it, and that's what you're looking for. More possible outs, so you're not just stuck. I mean, I've had that happen multiple times. when I've played against this type of life gain deck where you kill 1 or 2 creatures or you sweep 2 or 3 things and they just have nothing after that. This actually still can allow you to just draw 1 or 2 creatures depending on which combination of them there are, and with your opponent already being low, could be another way to end the game. So I'm liking this setup, and I really want to test that out and see how it plays. But again, down in the comments, let me know what other kind of decks you want to see, or maybe something you're working on that you can't get to a good version. Maybe we'll toss something together and see what we can do. Also, be sure to check me out during the early access event on Wednesday. I'll be playing multiple times throughout the day, and we will also be taking donations. So come by and check that out. We're going to be raising money for a charity as well. But for now, this is all I've got. The only thing I'm going to ask you is remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, and we will see you next time.